Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at New Director, New Film for its 50th edition. What an landmark. My name is Florence Almosini. I'm a senior programmer at Film at Lincoln Center and this year co-chair for New Director, New Film, along with my colleague La Frances Rui from MoMA. Just have a quick few remarks to share with everyone. So please know that New Director, New Films is supported by Film at Lincoln Center's New Wave membership program. And Film at MoMA is made possible by Channel, and even if you say Channel, but it's Channel, with additional support provided by the annual film fund. And today, I'm very pleased and honored to discuss the film we're all going to World's Fair with the writer-director, Schoenbrun, and lead actress, Anna Cobb. So welcome, Jane and Anna.
Thank you. So honored to be here online on the internet.
It's a perfect way with the film to be online on the internet, but also for people who watch the film in real life, they will be able also to follow the discussion virtually. So I'm going to start with a few questions to start the discussion going. And I wanted to start with you, Jane, maybe with the origin of the film, because, well, you made a previous documentary that was also dealing with the peril and the dark world of internet, I think more like Slenderman and YouTube footage. And you expanded this into a fictionalized, in a way, version of the dark world of internet, use and the spirit of this. So maybe you can talk a little bit about just the origin of the project on your point of view.
Yeah, so I made a documentary a few years ago, an archival documentary built entirely out of online footage called The Self-Induced Hallucination, that tried to deconstruct the strangeness of storytelling on the internet and the intersection of truth and fiction on the internet in a very different way than this film does. But that film, oddly enough, started kind of as like a mood reel for this film. I had already been working. I heard about the creepypasta community and the Slender Man and this sort of movement of outsider artists on the internet collectively telling each other stories, horror stories in the first person, and share, much like you see in World's Fair, really like sort of developing these stories together with this real desire for it to feel real and authentic. If you go to their subreddit, one of the main rules is everything is true here, even if it's not. This is like one of the core ideas of this community, that when you're telling these stories, you're never like, and then there was a ghost and he killed me. The idea is that they have to be believable. So when I heard about this, and as somebody who has memories in a pre-YouTube era of growing up, trying to be creative online and trying to exercise something for myself and figure myself out through fiction on the internet, I was immediately fascinated and obsessed and looking for the best way to articulate what that fascination was. And the documentary was sort of, honestly, I was like already working on a screenplay that I knew was going to sort of entail a lot of amateur video footage. And I just started looking for inspiration on YouTube, and the documentary was really constructed as inspiration for what this film eventually would become. It became its own project very quickly, but it was probably a year after the documentary was done that I sort of returned to the idea of doing a fiction piece in the same world. And, it was its own organic process, creating the fiction film.
Oh, it's good that you had plenty of time to research, leading you to like writing maybe like a stronger script. And with all the fact that you already studied, I'm not really a huge like online gamer person. People could be surprised, you never know. But the game you created from scratch, or something similar exists?
It's essentially like it's what's called MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role-playing game. In this film, it's sort of merging that phenomenon with the phenomenon known as creepypasta. And I'm sorry to get techno-babbly here, but creepypasta, which is derived from copy-paste, just creepy, is this idea. It's essentially like a meme horror story, right? So it's something unique to the internet in that it's like democratized and decentralized. The idea is that, and in fact, this is how the Slender Man was first created, which is, you know, the most sort of like famous example of this. That's obviously like, you know, become a major Hollywood film. But the idea was that people on the internet wanted to create stories together. So somebody would maybe post a picture, a drawing, a photograph that they had doctored to add a creepy monster in the background and said, has anybody else seen this monster somewhere? And then somebody else would chime in with their own picture that they made and claiming that they found it. And so again, the idea is this, everything is true here, even if it's not. Like, you know, in the same way that somebody on Reddit might talk about QAnon or Donald Trump, all of these people are sort of like sharing their theories and ideas together and sort of building this mythology. And there's this idea that deep down, everyone knows it's fake. Everyone knows that it's play, but they're all kind of pretending that it isn't. MMORPGs sort of take it one step further, and you know, they're not anything new. They do predate the internet. It's like not that far from like a Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, but this idea of participating as yourself or as a character in an ongoing story and game. So as the Slender Man mythos, which again started as a very simple, just sort of like, let's all make creepy photos of this creepy monster. 3 years later, it had developed this insane Lord of the Rings level mythology and world building where there are like different forces fighting for good and evil and all of these different monsters surrounding Slender Man. And if you sort of study the evolution of it, and this is what the doc does a little bit more than this feature that you've just watched, to me, it's like a really fascinating example of, I don't know, you can just learn a lot about storytelling, I think, through it, right? It starts as this very simple, pure thing, and it goes through this process of becoming commodified and, you know, like over, you know, sort of mythologized. And you really do feel this sort of, and I think it's a real internet thing, this fight for control of the narrative and this sort of like these power dynamics playing out in this democratized landscape of storytelling. And that was one of the main things in World's Fair that I was interested in, is watching the subtle ways that Casey and JLB in the film are sort of like, there's like a real power dynamic there and a shifting power dynamic as they sort of vie for control of this game to sort of express or get out of it what they're individually looking for.
Yeah, it's a very good explanation, and I've learned a lot in so few time. Since we're very lucky to have Anna with us today, maybe we can, and Anna, it's her first role, I believe. So can you talk a little bit about how you discovered or found and worked with Anna? Did you go through a regular like casting process, or it's someone you knew through the internet? Maybe she's a big fan of Slender Man, you know, big secrets will be revealed.
Poor Anna had to listen to me talk about this stuff for months.
No, this stuff was incredibly interesting to me because I didn't actually know much about it. Jane, I would not be able to play the role if Jane didn't actually have patience with me and really kind of show me the ropes. It's Jane's patience that really allowed me to understand the world, because to learn such a big community in such a short period of time, a short period of time, is really amazing to me. So thank you, Jane.
Well, and Anna, you weren't like somebody who was necessarily like a huge horror person either. And I do remember this like really long process that we had of like developing a language between each other, because it was super important, I think, for the film that like you really understood that character in all of her complexity so deeply. And I just remember like zeroing in on this idea that like horror can be beautiful to some people, and you know, and like sort of like developing with you this character who is really like longing for something in the horror. I think that like when we found that was one of the key moments for me in the development process. Anna was the hardest working, most talented. I mean, you just watch the movie, you know that Anna is like incredible. She's like a stick of dynamite exploding on the screen. And the way we found Anna is like, I just searched and searched and searched and searched. And I knew that this film would not be very good if we didn't have somebody at the center of the film to anchor it. And Anna is obviously, you just watched it, at the center of the film. She such a minimalist work in a lot of ways that she's really carrying it. And if it was somebody who felt inauthentic in any way, who didn't feel like a complete individual, but also somebody who could anchor really dramatic moments with like a lot of craft, it just wouldn't work. And that's a hard thing to find. I spent 2 months full-time looking, and that was a depressing time. You sift through thousands of headshots of teen actors, and I spent 2 full days going through every single entry on like the wiki of YouTube personalities, being like, maybe I'll find somebody in here who I think can do this or who fits what I imagined for the part. And then I saw Anna's picture in a headshot and was immediately like, oh my God, this is so different from everyone else that I've seen. There's something in it that like is fascinating. And we had her make a tape that just blew us away immediately. And it was like this moment of, those 2 months were absolutely worth it, because like I have been looking for this person, and they exist. I couldn't believe that you existed, Anna.
Oh, I couldn't believe you existed, Jane. That always makes me blush. Like, that's such a sweet, thank you. Such a sweet story. Thank you, Jane. I'm so happy. It's the luckiest thing that you thought that the picture was somewhat worthy, and that the audition, I remember, because like I kept submitting like all these auditions, and that the fact that they were like kind enough to say, hey, you can come to our office and in-person audition. I was just so excited. My mom came with me, and I was like, yes. It was very exciting to me to be able to actually, because then that means they somewhat like you, and then that's good as an actor. So.
Well, we did for the first audition, we had Anna read the sort of like the climactic scene in the movie, the second Skype call between the 2 characters, where he asks her if she realizes it's a game. And I was, like having Anna sort of like read it in a lot of different ways, because I wanted to see her range, and her range is obviously incredible. You just watched the film. But I remember her doing one reading where, and it's similar to what she does in the film, where she's almost like laughing at him while he's asking her if she knows it's a game, right? And it's this incredible combination of like deep hurt and betrayal, but also sort of like masked behind I don't care, and this sort of like, I want to hurt you with my lack of care. And it was just like, there's so much complexity. We taped that office audition. I remember watching it multiple times and just being like, I cannot believe we found a person who can do this during an audition too. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible, because the complexity of Casey, it's very interesting. It's a dual role, really, because there's a sort of like a lot of innocence and fragility, and you kind of want to protect her from her real life that doesn't seem so good, and her internet life. And at the same time, exactly at the same time, like very much at the same time, there's a darkness and sort of opacity towards her, and where you're like pulled in and pulled out, and you still want to protect her, and you're like, but who is she? And going with coming of age and like the teen years that are like very difficult to play and often seems inauthentic, that's when it would ruin it for you. So that was a lot of things to accomplish with very minimal or a false simplicity, really. So I really enjoyed the way Casey was portrayed, because she seemed like a real character, and someone you really care for, even if you never really understand how far she's going to go, and how scary really can she be, and who is she really. So can you talk a little bit, maybe, Anna, about how you managed to create such a complex and dual like character with in a way that seems very easy to do? And I know for a fact, watching many movies, that it's not.
Thank you. I really appreciate all that you said. It really means a lot to me. And for me, I think the most important part is not trying to like compartmentalize a character, because at the end of the day, if you're actually playing a human, like everybody, perhaps they're putting on a mask and they're like, this is who I am as a person, but everybody is so like multi-layered and has so many different sides themselves. Even if they try to ignore certain sides themselves, they're still there. Nobody's going to hide that. And so I just understood with Casey that whatever she's putting on and giving out, there has to be some kind of other side. Like if she's putting out a negative, there has to be a positive over here somewhere. And always the thing that helps me, of course, like you can do like the intellectual work of acting that they teach you within school. And it's like, of course, script analysis is very important, and like learning what happens throughout the scene is very important, like the beginning, middle, and end. But the best thing to really focus on, at least what helps me the most, is focusing on what happened before the words on the paper. So like, what was, Casey like before, the first scene? And I don't know, what really helped me the most was placing myself in their shoes, and like, at what point in my life would I ever seek comfort in something like a horror game or a horror movie? And it's somewhat, sad is not the right word. It's just kind of like, this kid must have some kind of a little bit of a fragile state of mind and be a little bit seeking some comfort in a place that most kids would not seek comfort in. I mean, if you think about like instant gratification and youngsters, it's usually things like drugs and like sex and alcohol, things like this. And it's like, no, she's seeking this like instant gratification from a horror game. That was like so interesting to me. Like, this is this is nothing that I've ever been around. So I guess just thinking about why, like her before moment, that's what really helped me. And it was very interesting to me that she sought escapism through a horror game. Out of every vice that she could have, it was a horror game. So
I think two other things that I would just say that, again, Anna is just like, was capable in a really complex and deep way. And a lot of it was just like hard work on her part to sort of get the nuances of it. But one thing would be that, I remember Anna and I, in our early discussions of the character, Anna, you would always say that every person is many different people. And I loved that. And I think that's so true of this character, is that we are seeing so many different sides of her on so many different days, and what's sort of going unsaid about what's going on in her brain, it is not the same thing. And it's not like a clean narrative arc like you would see in a more commercial film. It's really trying to represent somebody, in the same way, if you go through a year's worth of YouTube videos from some lonely person on YouTube, that you're seeing a lot of different sides of a complex personality. And the other thing I would say that was really nuanced in this role that Anna is just a master at is, there's so often in the film, more often than not, it's, I'd say it's like 70-80% of the film, the character is performing. Like, the character is aware of a camera's presence and performing. There are a few moments when we sort of see her outside of the gaze of like a diegetic camera in the movie. And, so there are two or more things going on in those moments, right? It's what the character is actually feeling and why they're actually doing the things they're doing, and what they want the viewer, this JLB character, whoever they're imagining viewing it, to be taking. And so that sort of nuance is like another level in the role that Anna just like, her script was marked up. I've never seen a document like that. She worked so hard on every single sort of facial expression movement that you see in the film. It's really like she put in the work.
Thank you. Thank you.
You mentioned you were not a big horror or game fan, but did Jane make you watch or study anything specific, or did she make you watch horror movies, like maybe more like traditional horror film?
I think it was more so like Jane would kind of she actually made this huge document that was incredibly helpful for me, because it was such a foreign world to me, and it was a lot of times like really small YouTubers that maybe perhaps were like maybe doing similar things to Casey, where you didn't really know where to like read the lines between the real and the fake. And yeah, there were some horror movies, but they were kind of more, I forgot what their names are, like some were from like the 70s and 80s and some more recent ones, but they weren't like huge blockbuster films. It was just more so like that feeling of eeriness of like, you don't know what's real and not. And I think that those always are the most interesting characters. Maybe they're a little bit like not fully there. They're maybe perhaps they're even contradictory. So that's kind of what Jane was showing me a lot. And then there was like all these like some of these articles of that I was reading with these little stories that I found to be quite creepy, but it did give me a good sense of what the community was about. And So yeah, I was very grateful. I remember Jane sent that out like quite recently, and I was trying to review over that. Plus, Jane was also like coaching me a lot throughout like a few months. That really helped. So, you know,
Anna would make like YouTube videos in character, as this was one of the ways we prepped for the role. Was she would sort of just improv as the character, and you know, I think the first one I asked you to research 3 creepypasta stories and just make a video as Casey talking about why you like each story. And you really had it from the beginning, but we would talk about each one after you made it and refine. And I remember there was one in a later video that you made where you were talking and you were sort of like there's you know, like 15 minutes into the video, there was this moment of just like quiet, and then you said something like, I don't know, maybe something will happen soon. And I was just like, there it is. That's the character. It was like, you know, like the improv sort of led us to this very specific loneliness of the character. I also made Anna watch a lot of films with performance. You know, I almost wanted to avoid the horror of it all, because to me, it's, the character loves horror movies, but I'm not sure that this is a horror movie. And I really wanted Anna's performance to be like a lot more sort of subtle and specific than you would see in most horror films. So I made her watch a lot of like art films too, and study sort of performances that I think are really great to sort of get the tone.
Such as like what type?
I remember the one that you talked about. What's the name of that movie? The Dennis Hopper directed film with Linda Manns. Out of the Blue. Where sort of like you remember that one, Anna? She's like a really angry sort of punk rocker who's obsessed with Neil Young in the movie. I thought that seeing that, you know, like Linda Manns is just such like a distinctive person on screen, and I think like Anna is not similarly, but like Anna is so herself as much as she is able to sort of inhabit a character, and that's such a raw performance. And yeah, I wanted to see you go to those sorts of places. I can't remember any others. Vagabond was a big one for me, but I forget if I made you watch that.
About that film?
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. When you mentioned, yes, it's not an horror film. There's element of horror played in the film, but it's not really an horror film. It's more, I mean, it's closer to a coming-of-age film. There's a lot of mixed genre in the film also. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you navigated like mixing all these elements and the genre together, because it's, at the end, it's a very strong and very together film with all these like little element added to it.
Yeah, I really like this quote by the filmmaker Asias. I think he was talking about Personal Shopper, and he talked about genre and using genre in that film like one color on his paintbrush and not as like the thing that he's painting. And I really love that, because the idea of making something that adheres completely to genre conventions just like isn't very interesting to me. I think I would have a hard time finding something that moves me personally within those conventions. I think when I'm looking for something that moves me personally, I think I'm most likely to find it by like really thinking about horror, and you know, like really thinking about like my relationship to these things that have moved me in the past. And it's sort of an oblique answer, but I think that is sort of what I was trying to do in the movie. Is when I was a young person growing up, like I loved these movies, and I was like really looking for something in myself in darkness, you know, and in dark places. And I sort of, you know, like I think I know enough about the genre to know how to tee things up, you know, and create expectations. And I was constantly thinking about audience expectations while writing this one, right? The idea that it does start in sort of a conventional horror way, you know, and slowly calls into question what you might be watching, until that sort of becomes the dominant idea of the film, is that your relationship to the movie you're watching is perhaps changing, just like your relationship to the character is changing. You know, it was really sort of about like using genre conventions towards that higher end of expressing something really personal, not just using genre conventions to make a really good or scary horror movie.
Was this clear already from when you were writing the script, or did that come later when you were shooting or editing?
Very much clear from when I was writing the script,
Okay.
and like structure of the movie is something that I was pretty obsessive about. The writing process of the movie that you see on the screen was actually like fairly quick, but obviously, like you've heard me talk about, the creative process was years and years. I spent so long looking for a structure and a form that would let me sort of talk about what I wanted to talk about, you know, and I think this is sort of my creative process on new things that I'm working on. It's very much the same, is that just, you know, like if the 80 minutes or 90 minutes of your film is the canvas that you're painting on, like what's the sort of full picture, you know? And the aha moment for me, which honestly came years after just obsessing about what I was fascinated by in this subject and these themes, was this structure of starting in the real world with one character, sort of slowly disappearing into the screen until you can't even tell the difference between the real world and the screen. And then coming out the other end in somebody else's bedroom eventually. This sort of emotional arc of the movie of switching from the third person camera, where we spend the first 30 minutes of the film, meaning a camera that's me, you know, that's a narrator outside of the film, non-diegetic, to Casey as narrator, right? We're like watching her videos, and that's basically the world we're stuck in the middle. And then coming out the other end and sort of again being a unbiased narrator camera with JLB. Once I had sort of created that idea for myself formally, like the rest of it came really quickly. But I was really searching for a language, you know, and at its deepest level for me, it was like a cinematic language that would let me talk about the emotions of the internet and this very interior place in a way that was more interesting than, you know, like just doing a film that was all like desktop, like you see in something like Unfriended, which I like too. But you know, I was looking for something, something that, a language that I don't think exactly I had seen before, and so that took a long time to figure out.
No, I'm sure, because so what always seems like the most, you know, in a way very apparent, like something simple, is never that simple. And the film has a lot of quality where it's immediately you immediately pulled into the film. It has I don't want to say simple, but you know what I mean. It's like you get into it, you think you understand everything, and then you think about it, and there's many layers. The same way the character of Casey is portrayed with so many subtlety and many layers. The film also, and the structure and what he's talking about, is also way more than what it first appeared to be. And that's why it's a movie that you can watch several times over and over. And every single time you go to the next level of understanding who is Casey, what is Casey, and the changes she's going through on many different ways. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about the changes that Casey is going through, what you instructed to Anna, and how Anna like portrayed this, because she's changing for the film.
Anna, do you want to talk about Casey?
I think that Casey, well, the thing is with her is, like I said, she's trying to find like escapism, at least in my own point of view on Casey. She is trying to find escapism through this horror game. And as she goes on, she kind of really likes the feeling that the horror game gives her, because it makes her feel kind of, it's like an out of a body experience, or perhaps like it's a state of mind that she has never been in before. Because I don't think that she really likes her own state of mind. I don't think that she likes who she really is up here or as a person. And so she finally, for once, doesn't really feel like herself. It's like, how many times like do you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't want to see your face. I don't want to see like this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to feel this way anymore. So I think that she almost placebo affects herself into feeling a certain way, so that, because she just wants to feel something different. Like, it's not even that it's a better feeling, it's just that it's a different feeling, because she's in such a dead town. She has such a dead life. I'm sure she's in high school that probably feels dead, and she probably hates it, and like a lot of people do. And so just to feel something different for once, it's almost like, even if you're watching like a terrible movie, you're like, oh well, this is taking me away from my everyday life, so I'm having a pretty good time. So just she starts to get like addicted to feeling different. She starts to get addicted to like not having to be in that state of mind anymore. So that's why throughout the movie, that's why almost like at the end with JLB, it's like it's that kind of contradictory feeling where like she doesn't know if she really feels that the game is real or not anymore, because she's placebo affect herself so much into thinking that this is my safe space up here, you know. So I think that's why almost she becomes like so territorial or defensive over the whole game. It's like they're messing with her safe space, and like that really, even me just thinking about it, if I have my own safe space and someone's messing with it, it makes me territorial as well. So that's what I think with, that's why she starts to go through almost towards a more, not aggressive, but she starts to become a little bit more feisty towards the end.
That's some great screams also in the film.
Yeah, that was very
good
cool.
Scream.
You know, how many times do you just want to scream? Because especially if you're like living in an apartment, you can't scream or you're gonna get evicted. So that was amazing. I was very, very pleased. I mean, I knew that it was a little bit maybe hard on people's ears on set, but for me it was fun to do.
It was great. I didn't tell Anna when. I told Anna to prepare a scream at the top of her lungs, but I didn't tell her when we would be doing it until the day we filmed that scene. I remember taking you aside and being like, "Hey Anna, remember I told you to practice that scream. Now's the time." And yeah, you let loose.
Yeah. Finally.
Yeah. A dream came through.
Yeah.
Jane, can you talk a little bit about the cinematography, because you used the filmmaker Daniel Patrick Carbone as your DP, and can you talk about your collaboration and what vision you had in mind for the film when you were working on this?
Yeah, I've been a fan of Dan's and a friend of Dan's. We've collaborated on a few projects in the past. He's just somebody that I trust completely. I mean, aesthetically, I think that his eye is so subtle, photographic, and just like gorgeous and sensitive and lonely. I think he looks for a similar thing that I was looking for in this film, and just like place and texture and the like sort of isolation of the landscape and of these very simple things, right? There aren't many different sets we're seeing in the film, but like just really living and finding this sort of like banality and beauty and loneliness in each one. That was the goal for me. And I've just seen that in Dan's work in such a vivid way. You know, it was my first time directing a narrative film. And I also knew that like I wanted to surround myself with people like Anna, like Alex, our composer, like Dan, you know, that I just completely trusted as artists who could bring something to the movie that would elevate my vision for it. And I think Dan, you know, did completely that with very little resources. You know, it was a very small crew, and that was by design, but that was also like a financial reality. And, you know, like we had many long conversations about like setting rules for, you know, when we're sort of handheld and when we're on a tripod and we're still. And I think the most important thing for me, and I remember giving like sort of a speech about this on the first night before production, was just making sure that every moment in the film exists for itself, you know, and exists as cinema, and is present and not just sort of like pushing along plot or setting something up for you. And that was really important for me to remember as like an anxious first-time director is, you know, you want to make your days and you want to get to a lot of things and you want to not go over budget, but you also want to make sure that every moment you're not just worrying about the next moment, you're really living in each shot and each moment. And you know, part of the film by design, it's like there's not a lot of coverage in the movie, and a lot of that was a performance thing to get Anna to sort of be able to go off book a little bit, but a lot of it was also knowing that, like, you know, if we were doing 6 different setups for one dialogue scene, like we were going to lose some of that idea of just like every moment is holy. And you know, we had a wonderful dynamic on set doing that. The last thing I'll say about Dan is just like, it was one of the most fun nights of my life. I remember, Anna, you were like glowing also. It was like the end of our first week, we did that 12-minute one shot in the middle of the film that starts with Casey in her bedroom, and then she walks outside, and goes into the barn and watches the ASMR video, and we zoom in on the screen and we sort of travel from, in one shot, the laptop in Casey's bedroom to the screen out in that barn. And pulling that off, Dan, that was like a Herculean effort. Dan was like, I've never done anything nearly this complex. And for me, it was just like so fun, you know, like it's just like 1 a.m. and 10 of us are like walking side by side through the snow. It's like, I don't know, it's like childhood or something. It was like the greatest thing to do that shot. You remember that, Anna?
Yeah, I do. It was a fun night. It was a really fun night.
Well, it seems like you had a very trustworthy collaborator, because when you work with other artists, sometimes the sum of everybody putting their point of view would make a project that seems like everybody had their point of view. And it's not the way we feel at all when we watch the film. Like, we feel it's a very beautiful collaboration and nothing sticks out. It's just the cinematography is wonderful and the music is wonderful, but it's also used at the right moment. It's not overloaded with music where it gets you distracted from the feelings you have, like watching Casey grow and you know, our evolution like this. But also I wanted to ask a little bit if you could talk about the first scene, which is, I think it's like 8 minutes shot for the webcam, and it's how we're introduced to Casey, and it's really how we go to the art of the film, and I got hooked into the film. So can you talk about creating that shot?
Yeah, and I just want to also agree with you completely with what you said before that about it. It's like conducting, you know, directing. And I think that like I'm not the type of person or director who wants control over every single element. You know, I don't think I micromanage. Maybe I micromanage a little bit about things that I really care about. But
no,
like,
look. Anna looks like, nope.
Yeah, she's like, no way. But it's about like every one of those decisions is so important, you know, and every decision, like you know, like Grace, our production designer, added so much of herself to the movie, and you know, like that's true for every crew person, every cast member of the film. But like your job as the filmmaker for those things that are really important, like Dan as the cinematographer, Anna as Casey, and Alex as our composer, is like, what spice do I know I want in here that I can't do myself? Like, and when I saw Anna, it was just like, I intentionally wrote the character as sort of like 70% there on the page, because I knew that that other 30%, which was going to be such a huge thing for the film, couldn't come from me. It needed to come from her. And, you know, the same is true for Dan as the cinematographer and a lot of the different roles on the film. But so the first scene, it was scary to do, you know, to start a film that way. I was conscious of it being my first feature and the first shot of my first feature, and it you know, it's intentionally playing with duration and trying to challenge you in terms of your expectations of, is this whole fucking movie going to be one shot in a bedroom still? She's also not doing much for the first 3-4 minutes of the shot. She's like making her bed and hanging out, and it just felt like a really important line in the sand to draw in terms of like the overall pace that the movie was trying to set. And, you know, saying, hey, slow down. Obviously, like once the pandemic happened and I realized that people would be watching this at home and not in a movie theater, I was kind of like, uh-oh, I really hope people don't take their phones out at the beginning of the movie. But I'm sort of a believer that like one of the most bold things you can do as like an American filmmaker trying to work at least a little bit within a commercial ecosystem is go slow. Cinema language is so television-esque and fast, and you know, like the second there's any what people would think of as like fat on the bone, you know, it gets trimmed. And I really wanted to sort of draw this line in the sand with this first film being like, I think that I'll be able to say more of what I want to say if we're patient, and if we sort of like, if the metronome is clicking, you know, slowly. Anna, do you have anything to say about the first scene? I mean, again, it's Anna's face and Anna's performance, and we're just like so anchored with her. When we shot that scene, I remember like from take one, Anna, and we had practiced a lot, but like from take one, you were just like electric, and we were all just like, oh yeah, this is gonna work. Wow.
Thank you. I remember that was our second day of filming. The first day, Gina had kind of like made it very easy for me, and we were doing like the nonverbal scenes on the first day, and then the second day it was the morning, and that was like the first time that I had dialogue as Casey. And for me, at least, like whenever I'm acting, the scene goes incredibly fast, so I thought that it was going to be like 3-4 minute scene, and I had no idea that it was going to be an 8-9 minute scene. So it went very fast because I guess I was the one doing it and you weren't watching, like Jean said, like just hanging out in my room. And I don't really have much to say other than I think that it was a very interesting way of kind of opening up like a character and just kind of seeing a person. Like usually in movies, you don't see a person that obviously they're not aware of the camera, but then Casey goes from not being aware of it and then suddenly being aware of it. And it's kind of like, must have been kind of cool for the watcher to just like then see like the actor look at you straight in the eye and just be like, have this like moment of looking at you. And I think it was very like coolly set up in my opinion. It was very cool.
No, I agree, but also I think I have to say that Jen, it's kind of gutsy to do such a long sequence in a movie of this feature, and a movie that's, you know, short overall, where you would expect, you know, like 10 minutes or short or like 15 minutes in a 3-hour long movie, or what would be called like an art foreign film or something like this. But there it starts very surprisingly. And yeah, I mean, I do hope that people don't start on that, oh, nothing is happening, because every little details like really build a character and bring the viewer into the world of Casey, and why you need to watch every moment of it. And I thought it was a really, really great move from the part of the filmmaking team to go this way, you know, and it totally works with Casey.
The hope is that there's like just enough tension there to sort of like keep you going along too, right? Like there's obviously like an arc to that scene. It's not just watching one person do one thing for 10 minutes. Like, you know, it's not exactly like how like Bellatar would open or something. It's sort of like each new moment is taking you closer towards this like sort of tension of like, oh no, what is this thing and what is she gonna do?
But it's interesting when Anna mentions like, yeah, she's not aware of the camera, but then, oh no, but she is. And you're just like, as a viewer, you're just like, oh wait, no, this is not what I thought I was watching. It's something different. And yes, it works on your understanding of what's.
Yeah, it's also, you know, the film sort of opens and closes with that distinction between on-camera face and off-camera face, right? And the hope is that it's sort of like immediately maybe clues you in a little bit on some of the things we were talking about before, of how to sort of like watch the movie and read the character and think about performance as like a really core part of everything in the movie.
I know we're running out of time, even so we could probably talk about the film maybe twice as long. But I wanted to thank you so much for being here and taking the time of talking about the film and your experience and sharing with me and the viewer. So it was really great to have you, Jane, and you, Anna. Maybe if you want to say a final note to the audience before we...
Just so honored. I mean, personally, I'm so honored to be part of this program with so many, you know, like filmmakers who I respect, and filmmakers, you know, it's the 50th year, and that retrospective is just like, I look at that list of filmmakers and I'm just in awe of people like Gregor Araki and Chantal Ackerman. So for me, it's so cool that y'all can watch the film in this context. I'm so grateful to Film Society and MoMA and everyone who has watched the film, you know, whether here or somewhere else. And obviously, like, first and foremost, so grateful to the team who made it, and Anna for being so courageous with her performance.
Well, thank you, Jane. I just would like to say thank you, everyone, for watching. And I would especially like to say, Jane, congratulations to you. And I'm so proud of you. And I just look at you and just my eyes are like, get so big. And like I always tell you, like, you're everything that I ever want to be when I grow older. And I just want to keep doing this just like you. And I'm just so proud of you, because to be able to make your first directed film into something that is truly just like such a magical, beautiful piece of art, I'm just, God bless you. And God bless everybody at home. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
I feel blessed.
And God bless you. Thank you so much for it. Thank you for your time, honestly. And
thank you.
Thank you.
It was great. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.